The Path of Exile 2 campaign is often praised as the absolute best part of the game. However, it also remains one of the most controversial and polarizing aspects of PoE 2. And why is this? Well, it all goes back to the age-old question of whether or not you should be able to skip an ARPG's campaign after you've beaten it on your account or during any particular season. In Path of Exile 2, the case is that you must complete it on every single character you play. But many people really do not want that to happen. And while some polls I have ran on my channel specifically may say that this is a vocal minority that want to get rid of the need to play the campaign on every single character you create, it is a loud group nonetheless, and Grinding Gear Games has been shifting much of their game design philosophy in favor of people who have been pushing them to progress forward into a new era of game development. Look no further than them shifting their view on how trading should work in a game like Path of Exile and how they have implemented the trading marketplace in-game and made trading quite instant and basically frictionless for people who play the game. The implementation of a campaign skip is another thing they may break on. Now, even though I am an advocate for us not being able to skip a campaign, I think bending may be feasible for Grinding Gear Games. There could be a middle ground solution here that makes basically everyone happier. Still, I think it is important to address the absurd Path of Exile 2 campaign crisis, break everything down, give every single side an equal chance to fight for their position, and then arrive at a conclusion as to what I think Grinding Gear Games will do with Path of Exile 2 in the future. And don't you worry, even though I am pro Path of Exile 2 campaign, no skipping here, I am going to give every single side a fair shot. But first, a quick ad. Our old bed was beginning to fail us. It had impression marks, it was staining, it was too low to the ground and had no room for storage. It just wasn't for us. Then FlexiSpot, whose desk and chair I currently use, contacted us about a brand new Japanese joinery bed. Immediately upon seeing the bed, I knew I needed it for my growing family. The bed frame itself is a specialized Japanese joinery structure, which leads to it being quite quiet and stable, which is vital to a wonderful wife and husband who have kids who like to jump on the bed all the time. Morning, night, it doesn't matter. There's no squeaking at all. The slats are secured with Velcro, so they rarely budge, and the inward recessed legs ensure the rubber wood frame is snug against the wall. Speaking of, the rubber wood is a hardwood that is incredibly resilient to scratches and moisture, which should result in a long-lasting, good-looking frame for years to come. The frame also promised 10.2 inches of clearance, which provide plenty of extra space for all of our valuables, mostly pillows. Well, here you are. It's a Talkative Try exclusive. Don't get used to this view. You're not going to be in this room often. As soon as the bed arrived, we were easily able to assemble and construct it. The frame, the mattress, all together. We love it. The kids love it. Even the cats love it. The past few weeks, this sturdy frame has improved my sleep quality immensely, which is massively important because I need to continue pumping out the Path of Exile 2 content for all of you watching. Click the link below and use the code TRY20 at checkout for an instant discount on both the mattress and the bed frame from FlexiSpot. Now let's get back to discussing the legendary Path of Exile 2 campaign debate. So what does the campaign look like right now? Well, obviously we have acts 1, 2, 3, and 4 with 3 interludes on top of that. But in the very near future, we will also have acts 5 and 6 that we'll need to complete, creating the entire Act 1 through 6 campaign of Path of Exile 2. The interludes will be completely removed and we'll only have to run those 6 acts to complete it. And this is worrying lots of people. They think it will be too long, seeing the lengths of Acts 1, 2, 3, and 4 so far. We know Act 5 is going to be similar in length to the prior 4 acts, but Act 6 is supposed to be an absolutely action-packed act from beginning all the way to end. It's a race to the final conclusion of Path of Exile 2 campaign, and there's been a lot of speculation on how exactly that will play out. But even right now, looking at the current structure of Path of Exile 2's campaign, people argue that it's too long and a skip is necessary. Why exactly do they argue that? Well, let's first take a look at the arguments and the reasoning of the skippers. Before we continue breaking everything down, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. It is the best thing you can do to help this channel grow. Thank you so much. First and foremost is the repetition. People do not like repeating the same exact story, the same exact bosses, the same exact encounters, character after character, league after league. They view it as though it's pure busy work, and once they've done it once, they don't need to experience it again. They view the campaign as not being as dynamic as other parts of the game, and it just being a prelude to the real game, the end game. What feeds even more into this repetitious nature is the length of the campaign. In Path of Exile 2, many folks view the campaign as being much longer than the campaigns of other games, like Path of Exile 1 or Last Epoch, or in some cases, even Diablo 4. While it might not be as long in terms of raw length, it might be quite equivalent, the difficulty of it and getting through the actual experience is a lot harder for many players, especially right now because not many are experienced with the campaign. So we have repetition, we have length, and then we have one that is a little contradictory to those former 2 points, but I still see brought up as a reason why we should be able to skip the campaign. Because the campaign is a tutorial to the actual end of the game. The end game, where you actually get to open up and explore all the different facets of your character and build them out to be as powerful as you can be. Yes, this argument I really don't think has much merit in Path of Exile 2 right now, where the end game is pretty bare bones compared to its predecessor, but it's still an argument I see for a campaign skip nonetheless. I will give credence here to the skippers. I think this argument is being made in a future wherein the end game of Path of Exile 2 is well thought out, it's fleshed out, there's many bosses, many encounters to experience, and they're just trying to preface their argument for that time. A lot of the people who are pro skip have done the campaign so many times or are just veterans and think they don't need to do the campaign because it's only a tutorial for the real game. And then all these factors, repetitiousness, the tutorial aspect, and it just being long all contribute to this. It's boring to people. People do not want to click through all the dialogue options. They don't want to fight the same story bosses, go through the same maps, fight the same monsters, do all the same stuff on different characters over and over and over again. And many of these veterans also decide to get through the campaign as quickly as possible, as smoothly as possible. They will play the strongest skill to level through the campaign, which will then also contribute to the repetitious nature. This all feeds into the campaign just becoming boring for people who would like to skip it. And I do understand that many of the people who say that the campaign in Path of Exile 2 is boring and they'd like to skip it also have many qualms with the end game. Yes, I understand that, but once again, I am thinking that they are working ahead to a time when that might not be the case for them, okay? So exiles, those are the primary arguments I see for the skippers, people who would like a campaign skip option where you run the campaign once and then you don't have to do it again, whether it's a once per league basis, whether it's a once per account basis, you just don't have to repeat the campaign nearly as many times as you currently do. If you have any other big arguments to add into that discussion, let me know in the comments below. Please, I'd love to hear your arguments. Before we talk about a middle ground approach, I'd like to lay out the side of the argument for the pro campaigners. We'll just call them the campaigners. And yes, a lot of this will be in direct conflict with what I just laid out for the skippers. You're just going to have to bear with me here. First and foremost, the campaigners see the campaign as part of the game. Grinding Gear Games explicitly said they wanted Path of Exile 2's campaign to be meaningful, to be something that people enjoyed experiencing over and over, and they were actively going to work toward that, not only during early access, but beyond the initial launch of the game as well. And lots of people buy into that ideology of Grinding Gear Games. They want to experience the campaign. They want to see it as a part of the game that their character starts in and progresses through, eventually breaking into endgame and becoming a god. But to reach that state, to reach the endgame, all the pinnacle bosses and all the customizability and dynamic gameplay of maps, again, in a beautiful future for Path of Exile 2, they need to beat the campaign, where they will start off as weak. They will start off as just complete novices in this dark and gritty world of Rayclast and become deities, right? If you just thrust characters into this endgame environment, which is very different in Path of Exile 2, the campaign and endgame, completely different entities, you remove that entire aspect of the experience for oh so many players. And the campaigners, they are keen on keeping this reality in Path of Exile 2. Argument number 2, it's a testing ground for characters. In Path of Exile 2, the campaign fights back, and people enjoy that about the campaign. In many other games, the campaign is a bit of a pushover, but in PoE 2, that's not the case, and it can serve as a true testing ground for your character. People enjoy that it bites back, and you have to make optimizations to your character, not in endgame when you're pushing various corruption levels or different tiers of map. You need to make optimizations during the campaign itself, especially if you're not following the most meta build out there and you're crafting something of your own design. Campaigners point number 3, it's a great place to introduce mechanics to players, whether they're veterans or complete novices to the game. Act by act, area by area, Grinding Gear Games can strategically place new mechanics to introduce to players throughout, slowly adding one on top of the next so that by the time you reach endgame, there's a complete cornucopia of different mechanics that you can engage with. Essences, Rogue Exiles, Breach, Expedition, Delirium, Abyss, and so on and so forth. If Grinding Gear Games continues to introduce brand new leagues and mechanics as they've done with Abyss and as they've done with Expedition and Delirium in Act 4 of Path of Exile 2, this system is going to work out so well. You'll be able to count on meeting certain power thresholds in the campaign. You'll know when Abyss is unlocked and you can start crafting with bones. When Delirium comes into play and you can start instilling your amulets. You'll know when Expedition becomes a reality, so you'll never be able to recombine your stuff because it's too darn expensive and in no way powerful or deterministic. Sorry, I just do not like recombination in Path of Exile 2 right now. But understand the campaigner's point. You're able to build on top of that foundational level of knowledge, one after the other with the campaign itself, instead of just immediately being swarmed with a whole bunch of mechanics, because you just know there might be someone out there who will play through the campaign, unlock a campaign skip, and not understand how any of the mechanics work and go into endgame and just be buried alive by all the possibilities out there, especially when the game is 1 to 2 years old. But with the campaign, that acts as, yes, a subtle tutorial for new, old, and returning players that shouldn't happen if Grinding Gear Games plays their cards right. And finally, the last pro campaign campaigner point, you slowly get better over time. And it's awesome to see that happening. Your 30-hour campaign run might turn into 20 hours, then down to 10 hours, and for the best among us, 5 or 6 hours after lots of practice and many years of play. And that all remains with it being a part of the game, a core part of the game. Honestly, it is awesome to see that progress occur, to watch yourself just become better and better at something over time, as opposed to just skipping over it and going into a part of the game that, yes, very quickly, unless Grinding Gear Games does everything properly and keeps revamping endgame to keep it fresh, can get repetitive over time. With the way Path of Exile 2's campaign is structured, with the way the areas generate and all the secrets you can find, with how they've implemented league mechanics in this very first league with Abyss, I do think the Path of Exile 2 campaign can remain fresh, random, exciting, while also allowing you to steadily improve how you run it with every subsequent run. But all these campaigner points just boil down to one simple thing. The campaigners see the campaign as a core part of the game, something that should not be brushed over. They have bought into that idea that Grinding Gear Games pitched all those years ago when they said, we want Path of Exile 2's campaign to be a real part of the game, not just a tutorial, but a tutorial that longtime players will love to play through. However, I am well aware that is just a fantasy, okay? And I think that the best way forward, even as a campaigner, as a purist, I think the best way forward is with a middle ground approach from Grinding Gear Games, given how polarizing this topic seems to be. And I really think there is a middle ground that Grinding Gear Games can take here without sacrificing the integrity or the sanctity of the campaign itself. Now, what are those ideas? What could Grinding Gear Games sacrifice to unite these two factions? Well, I have 4. All of them are from the community, the Talkative Tribe community from what I've seen, and I'm going to present the first 3 and then the one that I think is the best. You let me know if you agree with my ranking in the comments below. First off, we have an all waypoint unlock function. When you run through the campaign on your first character of the league, all subsequent characters have waypoints unlocked. Of the ideas I've seen, I think this is the absolute worst and will be abused in the worst possible way. Excellent players will be zooming far ahead at a rapid pace, and many people will copy them and fail, because being underleveled in Path of Exile 2 is a death sentence. This will assuredly lead to people being frustrated and end up quitting the game. Option number 2, alternate leveling paths. No, I'm not talking about infinite delve or infinite dungeons. I'm talking about what Grinding Gear Games has just introduced in PoE 2 with 0.3, interludes. Imagine an era where you complete the campaign at least once on your account, and then you unlock the interlude leveling process, a series of 20 or 30 different interludes that you can choose to experience on subsequent characters across leagues. Each of these interludes have minimal story within them, but still have that same core campaign-y experience, just without all the dialogue options that you need to go through, all the silly side quests and the like. You are just going through areas one by one, doing mini stories, completing very easy side quests as you work your way to endgame. The interludes introduced in Path of Exile 2 with this update are perfect representations of this. They are fresh, they are exciting, they are so well put together, and they tell these small, contained stories that also develop the lore of Rayclast in new and interesting ways. What if by the end of early access, or maybe by 2.0, Grinding Gear Games manages to put together 25 or 30 of these, and instead of going through the 6-act campaign, you just have to go through 16 or 18 interludes instead. They could be randomly chosen, or you could just go through them at your own leisure. You could go through Interlude 1, Interlude 7, Interlude 19, and so on and so forth, depending on what type of character you're playing. I think this is a super cool idea, but it obviously would require a lot of work from Grinding Gear Games. But they opened this can of worms with interludes 1, 2, and 3. Idea number 3 is one that, yes, I read in the community, but I know it's already being done by Last Epoch, and that is completing dungeons or optional difficult encounters to skip segments of the campaign itself. Imagine you get to Act 3, and instead of doing Act 3 or needing to do most of Act 3, you could bypass it by doing an incredibly difficult dungeon that you need to find a key to and you need to beat in one go. You face a series of gauntlets, of traps, of difficult monster packs, and to overcome it, you're going to need to use a lot of skill, have a lot of preparation, but if you beat it, well, you skip all the way to Utsal, for example. You don't even need to do any of the jungle part beforehand. You just skip right to the past and can go right up to Doriani. I think that would be an interesting idea and a novel system that Grinding Gear Games could introduce to the game without fully sacrificing the difficulty inherent in progressing through the campaign. You need to showcase your character's power, your level of skill, and you will still face and overcome challenges, but you just do it in a little bit shorter of a time span. And maybe these keys drop late into the game, so you can't necessarily do it on your first character, but you could do it on subsequent characters in that league. Idea number 4 was presented to me for the first time by someone in the community, Mirielli4445, and I'm just gonna read it verbatim because I think it's a great idea, and I think this is the middle ground that Grinding Gear Games could go with. They say, the only campaign skip I will accept is this. After completing the campaign as normal on every league, any subsequent characters you create will gain the act bonuses upon entering the town for that act. For example, entering Clearfell will grant plus 10 cold resistance, plus 20 life, plus 30 spirit, and plus 4 passive points, but will not grant any uncut spirit, support, or crafting currency. Entering the Ardura Caravan will grant plus 4 passive points, 10% lightning resistance, and so on and so forth. That right there is a good idea. You get that power spike that a lot of people are really searching for while not completely trivializing the campaign and the sanctity of it, running through it and progressing through it on your characters. However, on all subsequent characters, it will be very, very easy compared to that first one. Because I just love, and I think a lot of other players love this too, alongside Grinding Gear Games, that your first character it's unlike any other characters you experience in the league. You know it. Everyone's experienced it in 01, 02, 03. That first character progressing through the campaign, it's different than all the rest. Even if you're playing on solo self-found. Because not only are you just starting naked, you're also starting with very little knowledge on the actual stuff that's in the league itself. The first time you encountered Abyss, Abyssal Depths, the Liches, all that, you didn't have the knowledge, right? And when you are playing through that at very low power levels, going through it as the vision intended, it just hits different. And as a purist, I would hate to see that go away. With all this being said, what will Grinding Gear Games do? Well, I know the community is keen on seeing a statement or something done regarding the campaign, but I must say, based on 7,900 votes from the Talkative Tribe community, we have 15% of people wanting a campaign skip, 38% wanting nothing, and 41% wanting a mixture of the two. So some sort of alteration is desired. The people in the minority, the vocal minority, are the people who want a full-on campaign skip. Some of the highest upvoted posts in the subreddit for this league cycle have been concerning the campaign itself and the interludes, the introduction of Act 4, and whether or not the future of Path of Exile 2 will be one in which you run the full campaign. This person right here echoes that sentiment I stated just a few minutes ago, wherein people love the interludes and this should be an alternate leveling path, and it just opens up infinite possibilities for Grinding Gear Games in the future to tell more stories about Rayclast with very little need for a bunch of new assets. Other people are really looking for Grinding Gear Games to carve down certain sections of the campaign itself, such as the part of Act 2, wherein you go talk to Asala, then you have to go to the gate is blocked, you go back to the caravan, you need to use the desert map. There's a little bit of finickiness that makes sense for a first run, and subsequent runs, people just don't want to deal with it anymore. Then there are people praising the development of Act 4, which I totally agree with. I thought Act 4 was going to be janky, a little messy, kind of compared to Act 3, but it ended up being my favorite act of all 4, including the interludes too, taking the top spot above Act 1. It's more polished than Act 1, the boss fights are tighter, more cinematic, the areas are well done, the monsters are great, everything about it is just absolute cinema. No, I wish it was a little bit harder. Then we have people here who understand the inherent polarity to do with the campaign and game design. We understand that Act 4 and the rest of the PoE2 campaign is kind of a masterpiece, but so many people are angry with how it's been developed and certain areas that they have to play through, and it's really hard to grapple with that fact, not only as the player base, but as the game developers. I saw the genius like this person of the flooded prison, but the number of people I saw complaining about that map, and oh my goodness, I can only understand how many people will criticize it in 0.4 and beyond. It's extraordinary, even though this map is incredible. I seriously hope Grinding Gear Games bends but does not break on their stance of no campaign skipping. I think they've done a phenomenal job so far. Can't wait to see Act 5 and 6. However, with how they've been changing their stance on many long-time ideologies with the game, such as trade, I do foresee some changes occurring to how people must or must not run the campaign in Path of Exile 2 in the near future. But I'm pretty certain it will not be a full skip. It'll be something like we discussed in this video. So Exiles, if you enjoyed watching this video, make sure to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, hit the sub notification bell, and make sure to watch one of these two videos on screen right now. It's likely a podcast about Path of Exile 2 or another breakdown of Path of Exile 2's current state of game. As always, thanks for watching. I really appreciate it. Make sure to have fun and stay sane.